Welcome to the June 10th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. Everyone should be connected via audio. You're going to be muted. The presentation is going to be recorded. It will be posted to the Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling webpage within 1 week. If you have any questions this evening, you can submit those to the committee members through the Q&A function. You should find that at the bottom of your screen. You'll also have the ability to raise your hands. There may be several individuals who've called in on the phone, and we will allow time to unmute those callers just to ensure they don't have any comments. And just as a reminder, the bylaws for this committee mean that only the chair may recognize a public attendee. And again, you would use the Q&A function or raise hand to indicate that you'd like to participate. There is a designated time on the agenda this evening to allow for public comment. And then in addition to that, we have the hearing this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to Ken.
This is Ken Foote. I am chair of the committee, and I would like us to go through and introduce all of the members and the support staff personnel that are on your screen now. And as I said, I'm Ken Foote. I'm a public member, and I chair the committee. And Beth, you want to go next?
Sure. Beth Vargas Duncan. I'm an industry member.
Sandra?
Trying to unmute. Hi, I'm Sandra Smith, unincorporated Washington County public member.
Paco Vang?
Hi, Paku Vang with Washington County.
And Brad?
Hi, my name's Brad Anderson. I am a senior assistant county counsel for Washington County and represent Health and Human Services.
Tom?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Eggleston. I'm the division manager for Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling, and I am a non-voting member of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee.
And Kathy Folsom?
Good evening. I'm Kathy Folsom, and I'm a staff member with the Solid Waste and Recycling Division.
Vinod?
I'm Vinod Singh, industry member and living in unincorporated Washington County.
Sue?
Sue Shade, public member.
And I already forgot your name. Washington County Solid Waste.
Hi, sorry, Erin Stein. I'm the operations supervisor for Washington County Solid Waste. I'm also going to be your moderator this evening.
Ashvin?
Ashvin Nagaraja, I'm public member.
And Kathy Christie. Is Kathy muted? I have her name in a box, but I don't have. Anyway, we have another member. She must be able to hear us, and Kathy Christie. So, okay, let's go right into the solid waste recycling program updates.
Great, thanks, Ken. Committee members, good evening. Thank you for joining us all tonight. We do have a public hearing on our agenda item, and we have quite a few people in our attendee pool. So I'm going to kind of keep the updates brief so we can move on to the main topic this evening. I have just a couple updates and mostly about information about topics that your committee has made recommendations on, and just kind of doing a status check on those things. So first up, the Recology organic compost franchise facilities franchise agreement. Earlier this year, I guess it was April, the committee made a recommendation that the agreement be renewed by the Board of Commissioners for a period of 5 years. We have received some feedback from the city of North Plains that expresses a little bit of concern about future growth plans in the city and the facility's compatibility with that. Nothing major at this point. They just would like to have a little bit more dialogue with the county in regards to how their future plans might impact the facility, and the facility might impact their future plans. So we've delayed the action. We had planned to come back to the board on June 1st for that action, and we pulled it off the board's agenda. And we will be attending a City of North Plains Council work session on June 21st to give them an overview of the franchise agreement renewal process and give the City of North Plains City Council an opportunity to provide input and feedback into that process. We did extend the franchise agreement with Recology for 90 days. It was set to expire on June 19th. So we didn't feel like we had time and we wanted to allow enough time for that conversation to happen fully with the city of North Plains. So we do plan to return to the board this summer with that franchise agreement, and your committee's recommendation still holds. So I just wanted to keep you posted on that if there was any questions. Solid waste and recycling collection rates. At our last meeting, we heard a proposal for a rate increase for solid waste and recycling collection rates. Your committee voted to recommend option 1 at the time, which was the same option that staff had recommended. We attended a work session on this Tuesday with the Board of Commissioners. Staff were directed to return to the June 22nd board meeting with the recommendation for option 1. There was not necessarily unanimous support for that option, so we will be returning to that board meeting to continue the conversation and anticipate there might be some alternative proposals brought forward, but we're going to just carry forward at this time, and our staff recommendation continues to be in line with recommendations from the advisory committee and in materials submitted to the board.
So what objections did the council commissioners have?
Well, it's just a large increase, so it's challenging for the board to feel comfortable passing that increase. There was not necessarily objections across the board. It was not everybody was on the same page, but it appears the majority of the board directed us to continue forward with that option. So we'll see what happens on the 22nd. And I think it's important for the service providers and the haulers to know that, you know, the rates are proposed until the board approves them, and they all know that. And I've had communications about getting anything into computer systems and updating any kind of software. We need to make sure that we wait until the action is made and the board formally approves those rates.
Thank you.
Yep. And then finally, administrative rules. We also recommended some administrative rule amendments. Your committee recommended in their April meeting that the board approve these rule amendments. We did also take those to work session this Tuesday, and the board was supportive of those rule amendments and agreed with your committee and directed staff to return to the June 22nd board meeting for that to be an action item as well. And then that is where I'm gonna stop there with updates and answer any other questions if there are any. Nope. Oh, you're muted, Ken.
So embarrassing. Okay. Aaron, have we had any requests for oral communication?
I have not seen anything in the Q&A, but this would be the time if anybody would like to.
And this would be for off agenda items, so off topic, not for the public hearing.
Not for the Ridwell. But at the bottom of your screen should be a place to click raise hand if you want to raise your hand and say something. Okay, that opportunity's been lost. We're going to move right into the Ridwell exemption request, and my understanding is Kathy's going to initially fill us in on the background on what the proposals mean and do. Thank you.
Good evening, Kathy Folsom, Solid Waste and Recycling Division staff. I'm going to be, as Ken mentioned, presenting the staff report regarding the public hearing to consider the exemption request from Ridwell Inc. For a monthly fee, Ridwell's business collects hard to recycle materials from community members at their home. Currently, the materials that Ridwell collects are not included in Washington County's curbside recycling program and include plastic film, household light bulbs, clothing, and styrofoam. Washington County Code Chapter 8.04.120 requires that any person that collects, stores, transports, or disposes of any waste or solid waste for compensation, a fee, in unincorporated Washington County must obtain a certificate issued by the board. Upon review of Ridwell's program, staff found that the materials being collected by Ridwell are waste or solid waste because they are being discarded and are no longer wanted or are useless to the generator. As mentioned, the collection of waste or solid waste for a fee does require a certificate issued by the board. On May 4th, 2021, Ridwell sent a letter to Washington County requesting an exemption from the requirement to obtain a certificate pursuant to Washington County Code 8.04.130 subsection C. Staff interpreted Ridwell's letter to be a request to allow Ridwell, and other companies to collect materials for a fee that aren't included in the county's curbside recycling program, but still could be collected for recycling or reuse from individual households. Washington County Code Chapter 804.130 subsection C states that certificates shall not be required of persons, practices, processes, businesses, or waste exempted by the board after receipt of a recommendation of the advisory committee on the basis of findings made after a public hearing, but the same is not necessary to the implementation of the county or a regional solid waste management plan. Ridwell's request is that the committee finds that the practice of collecting certain wastes for recycling for compensation should be exempt from the requirement to obtain a certificate. In a letter dated April 16th, 2021, the Washington County Haulers Association proposed an expanded service option for collecting hard to recycle materials from residential customers. The proposed service may be offered as an additional collection service and therefore would not be included in the monthly bundled regular garbage and recycling collection service, and may be limited to certain customers, but over time may be expanded to all customers. The Washington County Haulers Association proposes that the county include this service in its regulated solid waste collection program through the development of service standards and rates, as required by Washington County Code 8.04.130 subsection C when reviewing a request for an exemption from the county requirement to obtain a certificate. Your committee needs to hold a public hearing to gather information and make findings as to whether the request for that exemption to not obtain a certificate is not necessary to the implementation of the county or a regional solid waste plan. Staff is recommending that your committee hold the public hearing to gather information from interested parties. Following the public hearing, your committee will deliberate the topic and may choose to direct staff to assist in the development of findings for consideration at a future meeting. As a reminder, the recommendation before you concerns a request for an exemption from county code requirements to obtain a certificate that only applies to unincorporated Washington County. We have received public comments from community members throughout Washington County. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Kathy. So Brad, when we make a recommendation or a finding, are we constrained to either a thumbs up, thumbs down, or can we put restrictions on? In other words, can we as a committee, if we franchise somebody, whether it's Ridwell or the haulers, can we put restrictions in and say, we think it's a great idea, but you have to pick up all this and this too? Or can we, to what extent can we regulate the performance of what they're proposing to do?
Well, so what you're doing here is you're not creating a new franchise. What you're creating is an exemption from the franchising requirements. So what you could do, and we've had substantial discussion on this, is if you want to make sure that the items that are picked up go to are actually recycled and don't go to the dump, then you could put some restrictions on that, or any other restrictions that you think are appropriate for any sort of exemption that you may recommend to the Board of Commissioners.
I guess where I'm coming from is, are we exempting an activity or are we exempting a company? And how narrowly can we restrict what we authorize the company to do in our county?
Well, so the proposed action from the company was to exempt certain activities and not necessarily create an exemption for a particular company.
Okay, and are they proposing to have, and I couldn't tell from their letter, essentially a franchise to perform that service? Okay.
No. What they want to do is have an exemption to the franchise requirements to pick up items that are defined in our code to be solid waste, but are hard recycled materials that they want to pick up on a subscription-based services, and that's the proposal that they will be presenting to you.
Thank you. I believe we're going to get presentations from both the haulers and from Ridwell, and sort of flipping a coin. I guess we can start with Ridwell and let them make their presentation, and then let the haulers make their presentation. So who's speaking on behalf of Ridwell?
So
So
yeah. So Ken, you know, we've tried to figure out a fair way to do this, and what we are proposing as staff is to allow the proponent of the exemption to have a 15-minute opportunity to present their arguments, and then allow the Haulers Association to have 15 minutes to present their argument, and then you can open it up to the remainder of the public testimony. What I would remind you too, because this is a public hearing, is that you have to open the public hearing and then allow for opportunity for people to speak.
Prior to the presentations from the.
Correct.
Okay, I now declare the meeting, or the meeting, I guess, a public meeting open. And does anybody have an immediate comment before we hear from the two proposals?
Let's let Erin kick off the kind of the framework and
Oh, that'd be
she has-
great.
she has
Yes.
some information about that, but then we can consider the public hearing open as you just opened it.
Right. I'm usually
Okay.
sitting in a room looking out at a crowd of people. This is all new for me too. Go ahead, Erin, please.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen real quick. So we just have a layout here of the process. Staff's already presented on the topic. As Brad mentioned, we're going to provide Ridwell with 15 minutes to make a presentation to your committee this evening. The Washington County Haulers Association will also be provided 15 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. And then any public attendees, which are considered interested parties, will be given 2 minutes per speaker to comment on the topic. After all of the public comment is complete, you will then close the meeting, Ken, as the chair, and then the committee will have time to discuss the issue. If we need to ask further questions from a requester or an interested party, we can pull them back into the discussion. So during each presenter's time, we'll get them into the meeting as a panelist, and then we'll put them back in the attendee pool just as an order of process. I have an additional slide here. So with the 2 minutes, if you're interested in speaking as a public attendee, we're just going to ask that you raise your hand. All of your names are showing up for us in alphabetical order. We'll probably just go down the list as they are in order. I have a timer which will pop up. It looks like this. Once we recognize you, if you could just state your first and last name, and then we'll start that 2-minute timer. If you are having any issues, you can always send us a message through the Q&A function that comes to the committee, and then we can answer or reach out to you. And I know that Kathy Christie called in. That's the phone number showing on the screen. There was, I think, 1 or 2 additional folks that called in. So we'll just want to make sure we unmute them and give them an opportunity to weigh in just in case they have anything to contribute. They will not be able to raise their hands, obviously. And with that, I turn it back to you, Ken.
Thank you. I want to mention that Kathy Christie is a member of the Garbage and Recycling Committee, and we have one other phone number up here too, but I don't know who that is. So at this point, oh, Erin, are the people presenting on behalf of the 2 proposals going to be on screen as well? Do they?
Yes. So I think first up we have Ryan Metzger, and I will go ahead and promote him in as a panelist. That way he can join us here.
Okay. So once she gets you on board, you've got the floor. Can you, Ryan, you're still muted. You have to unmute.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go.
The intricacies of Zoom we all have to deal with.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much, the committee members and the people of Washington County for letting me speak here. I'm Ryan Metzger, the founder and CEO of Ridwell, and I'm excited to share more about what we do and why we're requesting this exemption. So let me share my screen. All right, can I get a thumbs up from someone just to make sure that they see that? Thank you.
Yeah, you got that.
Fantastic. So hard to recycle items, which is a subset of what Ridwell does, is something that's been a problem for many years. Families were asked to take things themselves. They were told that it's not good for the MRFs and jamming up machines. And so this is something that's happened throughout the country and really the world for many, many years now. It's something that's also connected to larger challenges in the environment that have only accelerated in recent years. So plastic waste is something in oceans and rivers and lakes that has become top of mind for many, many people, as well as the climate crisis that people view waste and landfills as something contributing to it. So my family did something about it. And this is my son, Owen. He's now 9 years old, but when he was 6, we had a little father and son tradition where every weekend we would find a category that we could take to a local partner in the Seattle area where we live who would reuse or recycle it. And not wanting to have car room go to waste, we would post in local neighborhood groups and offer to take people's styrofoam, their light bulbs, their plastic bags, their e-waste, those types of things along with our own. It caught on in a really big way. And, just 6-9 months after doing this, over 4,500 people joined our little community project that we called Owens List. And so, we had a little news crew follow us. And there was just such a big grassroots level of support for the efforts that we were trying to do to help promote waste reduction. Ridwell was something we then started to do as a way to do this at a larger scale. So a father and son doing pickups on weekends, we did 1,000 or so of them, and yet there was such a desire to do even more. And so Ridwell is a solution for that that takes reusable and hard to recycle items outside of curbside services and makes sure they do not go to landfills. So what we do is we provide reusable sorting bags, which are cloth, that we provide to people to sort things like threads and plastic film, batteries, light bulbs. We give lots of instructions so people of all ages, including Owen's younger brother who's 5, knows that light bulbs go in that one or batteries go in the battery one. We have a rotating category, which is almost always reused. This one is small kitchenware items for a local refugee group. And then we let people request a pickup every 2 weeks from a bin that is on their porch. We grab the cloth reusable bags, we give them fresh ones, and then we take all those things to local partners on their behalf. Ever since Owens List and Ridwell, we look at these types of charts and intentionally stay far away from anything that's already being recycled locally. So you won't see us ever do aluminum cans, cardboard, things like that there already is a great solution for. Rather, we look at things that fall outside of that system and that we could reuse or recycle on people's behalf, and we try to find a way to do that for them. We also believe that we're making curbside recycling better. And so these are just some notes that were in the Metro Solid Waste Plan. Republic Services email just from a few days ago saying, please keep plastic bags and wrap out of recycling. A lot of people wish cycle these and put them in their carts, and we found a way to recycle them instead. And so we're reducing what is put in traditional recycling services. So how does it work? There's a lot of behind the scenes work that we put into to make sure this is done efficiently and that nothing is missed and that we maintain very, very high service levels. So that's things like routing that makes sure that the miles are actually reduced from people doing this on their own. We have a live view into where each stop is. And so we can tell you that, stop 42, you haven't done yet, and we know when we will get there. We have vehicles like this that are far different than a garbage company truck. They are really designed for this type of service where things are separated and they are provided to partners. And then lastly, we have an app that is marked whenever a pickup is done, and a text message is sent to that user saying, great job saving your plastic film from landfills. We also then are collecting the data and we can give feedback to them. So we know what was picked up from which house and what happens to it after that. Our warehouse, this is what happens after things are picked up. This looks nothing like a MRF, so things are brought in, they're sorted, they're in bags, And then there's a lot of work to kind of separate them and put them in bales, put them in buckets, put them in boxes, whatever the case may be for that particular category. Things are pre-sorted, we take them in and we make sure they're in a condition that can be passed on to a reuse or recycling partner. If you look at the partners in the Portland area, we operate in the city of Portland today. Most of them are actually very close to home, and that's by design. You look at many of the ones that are reuse as well. So people like Rosehaven, Free Geek, Birch Community Services. A lot of what we do is reuse, and we try to keep things as local as we can. A few of them travel, down to Salem for corks, or to Nevada, or to El Paso. But local is really important, as is transparency and telling people where their things go. Community is also a big focus of ours. Just a few local stories. So kids books was a big need for the Children's Book Bank of Portland. So that was a featured category. We said, hey, Ridwell members, on this particular date, we will be picking up kids books that you might not be using. We'll collect them and we'll give them to this group that serves a low income population. We ended up collecting over 10,000 books that were distributed back to the Children's Book Bank of Portland, so they could stock their library heading into the summer reading season. Kitchenware was another partner we had with Community Warehouse. So we picked up people's pots and pans and plates and things like that, and distributed them back to a great local partner. And then we have groups like the Girl Scouts here who see their Girl Scout cookies come in plastic wrap, don't want that to go to waste, and know that we can help recycle it into someone's new deck. We also meet the community needs by finding new categories. And so this right here is a clamshell container that we heard loud and clear was something that people had a desire to recycle that they couldn't in their traditional recycling systems, and couldn't even drop it off anywhere. So what did we do? We went hard into trying to figure out a way to do this. So we started in Portland in November. We heard loud and clear that was a gap in the system that people were interested in us trying to fill. We found multiple partners. We spoke to them many times. We vetted them. We figured out what they do with things. We ran a small pilot to make sure that we could handle it and that it could be baled and all those types of things. And we recently rolled it out to the whole Portland area just last month. And it's been very, very well received by people who've had this new option developed for them. Our members love having Ridwell around, and this really makes it all worthwhile for me personally. We have people like Melissa saying, thank you for making my daughter's future better. We have someone like Maureen saying, you're one of the reasons I have hope for our community, country, and the world. And then people like Jill saying that you're an inspiration to us for the service you are providing to help us waste less. Cities throughout Oregon and Washington have welcomed us without any code changes. They recognize we're a different type of service. So it's people like Seattle, it's someone in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability in Portland saying that we're approved because we're a different service. It's people like Ross and Mercer Island, Washington, saying that we actually strengthen rather than interfere with traditional garbage haulers, and others saying that I would have no problem if they're doing things that Waste Management does not, which is what we do exclusively, is things that others do not. You look at the challenge of waste broadly, and it requires complementary services. You're one of many. So garbage haulers and franchise systems have their place for sure. I'm definitely glad that there are not tons of companies driving around and doing different stops and things like that. I think it's great that that exists. But there's things that are different. There are junk haulers that take big loads from people's driveway, and I think that's important to clear things out. That's something that's not in franchise systems typically. And there's something like we are, who we do by request pickups of particular items that are source separated to specialized partners that we've sourced. So with that, thank you very much for the time. Just getting back to the mission, we're really about serving communities, families, the planet, and doing it in ways that do not interfere, but actually make franchise systems stronger. And that's why we request this exemption. And thank you very much for your time in presenting to you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we go to a question? Do we want people to be able to ask him questions directly, or do you want to listen to the other presentation first?
Let's hold questions until we hear all of the public comment and input, and then at the end, when we close the public hearing, we can open up if committee members have questions and you want to open that up, Ken, then we can open that up for questions. So we'll go ahead and put Ryan back in the attendee pool, and then we'll promote the Washington County Hauler Association folks in, and then if we have questions at the end, we can promote Ryan back if there's questions for him.
That's good.
I am trying to see if I can put him back. He may just have to sit nicely.
I can leave
with
and
his,
come back if you'd like. Would that be easiest?
or just if you probably turn off your
I can just
camera
mute. Sure.
and mute, that would be good. Thank you. Okay, so next we have the Washington County Hauler Association representatives. This evening we have Dean Camphor with Waste Management, Kristen Lichtner with Pride Disposal, and Lexi Garino with Garino. So give me just one moment to pull those individuals in. Okay, did they all come in? I see Kristen.
I don't see Dean.
Yep, Dean's here. Kristen and Lexi, there we go.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
They're all here.
All right, thanks, guys. I will start the 15-minute timer once you introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Chair Foote and committee members. I'm Kristen Lichtner. I'm the president and one of the owners of Pride Disposal and Recycling. Thank you for your time today. We are a fourth-generation family-owned and operated business located in Sherwood, and we serve 7 jurisdictions in the county, including the unincorporated Washington County. Tonight, myself, Dean, and Lexi are here to speak on behalf of the Washington County Haulers Association on the topic before you. Throughout Oregon, solid waste is regulated, and most communities require a franchise certificate or license to provide collection of solid waste. Solid waste services, which include recyclable materials, are regulated to protect the health and safety of Oregonians and also to provide consistent, efficient, affordable, and equitable services to all of our customers. We also provide living wages and good benefits to our employees, and Pride's drivers are members of the Teamsters Union, as are 95% of the drivers serving Washington County. The haulers work in partnership with the county to provide the services that the community needs, and we are responding to that need tonight. Throughout the years, we have worked with recycling processors and our local government partners to expand the list of curbside recyclables based on what could be accepted, sorted, and responsibly recycled. These programs have evolved over time from the original monthly collection where materials were separated at the curb to the every other week dual stream program you're familiar with today, with a mixed recycling cart with glass and motor oil on the side. We view our proposed expanded recycling services as the next step in this evolution. On-the-side recycling is something we've done for more than 40 years. This is a service the haulers are very familiar with. We are prepared to offer an expansion on our current on-the-side recycling services to all residential customers in unincorporated Washington County. We'd like to continue to work in partnership with the county to develop rates and a consistent service model for customers. Providing this service through the existing certificate allows the county to have continued oversight and involvement on what is collected. They can add materials as they see fit, and they will set and regulate the rates for this service. Responsible collection is what we do. We already have the infrastructure in place to expand services in the county, and it would reduce customer confusion to have all of their garbage and recycling needs provided by their haulers, a relationship that already exists. One of the other hats I wear is that I am the board chair of the Association of Oregon Recyclers. And while I'm not here speaking on behalf of AOR, I do want to share that AOR's vision is to achieve a system of sustainable materials management in Oregon by supporting high quality recycling and thoughtful consumption, which is really important for us all to understand as we discuss these expanded recycling programs. The life cycle analysis, or LCA, of products is the key piece here. The very high level summary of a complicated topic is that LCA speaks to the overall environmental footprint of a product, and that should be the most important analysis, not whether or not an item can be recycled. Some items which may not have a current recycling market and end up in landfills actually have a better environmental footprint than similar products that can be recycled. And I'm not sure the greenhouse gas impacts of shipping #1 plastic clamshells to the southern part of the United States, as Ridwell is doing, will be outweighed by the environmental benefit that may exist from recycling those clamshells. The Oregon DEQ has done a lot of research on the importance of life cycle analysis and waste reduction, and I would encourage you to dive more deeply into those topics as we consider this decision. We also don't believe in greenwashing our customers, but if there is a responsible market for material to be recycled, we are that resource. For many years, we at Pride have accepted hard to recycle items at our depot in Sherwood. These materials range from styrofoam, batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, and more. Traditionally in Oregon, these hard to recycle items have been handled at depots, and we've been handling them for years and responsibly recycling them. Our industry is highly regulated, which means we are held to a high standard. Ridwell has come into Washington County by breaking the rules and violating the county code. The haulers are required to comply with all local, state, and federal regulations, and we do. The haulers are also members of your community. We are longtime supporters of youth sports teams, community events, high school scholarship programs, and many more. We are your neighbors and community partners. We put our community values into action by protecting the environment, providing equitable services across the county, and advancing our internal diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, as well as the county's DEI goals by following their administrative rules. The question before you tonight is, who do you think should be providing this expanded recycling service in the county? Should it be the haulers who have provided county customers with reliable, transparent, and equitable services while following all county regulations? Or should it be an out-of-state company that violates local government regulations and makes its own rules? If the current system is maintained, the county will have full control over what is collected and at what price, and customers and the county will continue to have accountability and transparency in the rates and the collection programs. The hauling industry, in partnership with local governments, has helped advance recycling in Oregon and get us to where we are today, and we're ready to help take the next step in advancing the program in Washington County. So thank you, and I will now turn it over to Dean Camphor at Waste Management.
Thank you, Kristen. Good evening, Chair Foote and members of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. My name is Dean Camphor. I've been in the garbage business for 42 years. The last 25 of those years, I've represented Waste Management of Oregon in the capacity of Municipal Marketing Manager. I want to share with you a little about what Washington County licensed recycling and garbage collectors are proposing. Licensed haulers have been collecting recyclables in coordination with our local jurisdictions for many years, and we are the collection experts. Hard to recycle materials can easily and cost effectively be added to the current curbside collection system, using the existing haulers under the authority of our current licensing with Washington County. The Washington County Code clearly defines that the recycling collection is the responsibility of the licensed haulers. If the jurisdictions desire to expand the recycling program in the public interest, using the existing infrastructure is the most sustainable solution for the county and the citizens, as they have invested heavily in the infrastructure for decades, including clean fleet with compressed natural gas trucks. Why do local governments franchise or license the collection of solid waste and recycling, you may ask? The government oversight provides local community control over the recycling and garbage collection, providing a stable and reliable service delivery to the citizens. Here are some of the benefits of the system. Equity. Everyone in the community receives the same standard services at the affordable rates. So whether you live in Timber, Oregon, or the denser population of Washington County, you will receive the same service for your service area. Rates are regulated. The local government sets the rates and reviews cost detail to ensure transparency and fairness in garbage, recycling, and yard debris fees. It provides living wage jobs with benefits, and most of our drivers are union represented. Diversity of haulers. The system supports family and women-owned businesses as well as the large publicly owned companies. Promotes community values such as advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, recycling goals, and material recovery education. It also ensures safe and environmentally protections. You are assured that the collected materials are going to an approved facility with environmental reporting requirements, ensuring safe management of these materials and proper insurance. The collection equipment is properly maintained and insured. It provides for efficiency of routing and use of existing infrastructure. Assurance of materials collected have viable, responsible, sustainable markets, and the county will be involved in determining what materials are collected in the system. It maximizes the efficient routing and traffic utilization for positive environmental outcomes. This will reduce street traffic, wear and tear, and pollution. And last but not least, we pay franchise fees to support the system and the community, material recovery education, collection oversight, and general fund support. In conclusion, we, your licensed haulers, can and want to offer services to expand recycling. Our proposal will be transparent and cost-effective, equitable in access, and help communities achieve recycling goals. By the way, Waste Management offered to provide a similar expanded recycling service a couple years ago to some of the communities we serve in Washington County. The local governments indicated they were not ready at that time. We think the time might be right now. We hope to expand our partnership with you so we can meet the customer needs of the county and that everyone has the same access to services. Thank you for your time tonight, and I'll next turn it over to Lexi Garino. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. As mentioned, I'm Lexi Garino. I'm the co-owner of Garino Disposal and Recycling, a third-generation family-owned business operating in Oregon since the 1970s. The garbage and recycling industry has been working for nearly 100 years to improve, solve, and accommodate the community's disposal and recycling needs. Over the years, we've innovated, expanded, and serviced every need of the consumer alongside the guidance of the local governments. Every iota of garbage and recycling is tracked, recorded, and disposed of or recycled to the best of our end market's abilities, as it should be. Garbage and recycling is a complicated concept that takes much research, dedication, and due diligence to ensure the safety and prosperity of our communities. The way the industry is structured now is intentional. It is operating at peak performance, servicing every business and home across the region at equitable and fair rates. I joined the family business and started in this industry about 6 months ago, after losing my father to cancer. I'd previously held a career at the Portland Business Journal, where I've had the opportunity to work with some of the city's most innovative companies. What Ridwell is doing is not innovative. They're picking up items and taking them to end markets that the garbage and recycling companies already partner with. What Ridwell is doing is spinning a marketing campaign and playing on the guilt of the region's affluent communities' production of waste. The service they're providing is violating county code, and they are hauling solid waste in an unregulated, inequitable manner. As you've already heard and will continue to hear, the hauling of such solid waste, whether recycling or garbage, is a service that must be regulated for the safety of our communities. It is clear that there is demand for expanded recycling programs. In fact, the community has spoken, and my company took action. At Garino Disposal, we began to develop a program to collect recycled batteries, light bulbs, textiles, styrofoam, clamshells, and plastic film. We already have the infrastructure, we have the customers, and we have an understanding of the regulations needed to do this correctly. So, end markets were established, demand was generated, and we take off. Not so fast. Did you know that my company, Garino Disposal, if I went door to door and tried to pick up these items for these customers, it'd be a violation? Did you know if I started this program in North Plains, did you know we did start this program in North Plains with a strong customer base and even in a small rural community? But I'm not allowed to offer it anywhere else until it's decided what happens with Ridwell. Not to mention, Ridwell has no interest in servicing our rural community because it doesn't work for their profitability model. It's too far for them to go, even though the consumer wants the product. How is that fair and equitable? Did you know I was told that I can't even generate demand and ask my customers if they want Garino Disposal to service them outside of the North Plains region? Regardless of the fact that I can see my customers asking for this service on apps like Nextdoor. Did you know that Ridwell has been operating and doing all of these things and has not been stopped? Instead of being reprimanded for violating county code the way that I would be, they're being praised as the company that's come in and saved the industry, when in reality, the garbage and recycling industry can already do this. They're coming in and fixing what is not broken. Let us, as the already existing garbage and recycling providers who understand the need for regulation, transparency, and safety, give the consumer what they want. By allowing Ridwell to exist, you are further complicating this problem. You are asking the consumer to pay astronomical prices for a service that can already be provided instantaneously by the current garbage and recycling companies to all customers at an equitable rate, not just the affluent few in the most populated areas. Now, let me be clear. I am not suggesting to regulate Ridwell. The company cannot be allowed to operate in our communities. Ridwell's pushy and bullish tactics of lawyering up are not those of a company working to better our planet. They are traits of a greedy venture capitalist-backed firm whose sights are set on making money, appeasing shareholders, and taking your disposable income for their benefit. The company reports to Correlation Ventures, Concrete Rose Capital, MSH Capital, all based out of Silicon Valley, not our local communities. Further, the regions they initially targeted include affluent areas of Portland, Lake Oswego, West Lynn, all with household incomes averaging over $100,000. I'll say it again, they're in the business of making money. Saving the planet is simply a byproduct of their operation. Attempting to regulate such an organization will only lead to further legal battles, frustration, inequitable services, and utilization of public resources that could go towards more worthy causes. Exempting Ridwell or allowing them to operate is not the answer to the county's recycling needs. Don't let this company destroy what we've built as a sustainable and equitable, nurturing garbage and recycling industry that is in the business of servicing our communities. We, as the garbage and recycling haulers, report to only our customers and to the government, and willfully take on the duty and opportunity to solve your waste and recycling needs. We as a society don't need the nuisance of these companies trying to capitalize on people's guilt of throwing things away. What we need is the ability as the garbage and recycling haulers to expand our recycling programs and give the consumer what they're asking for. We're doing everything we can to meet our customers' needs, including speaking right here today. If you exempt Ridwell and allow them to operate alongside us, you are allowing this company to come in and collect what they claim is not solid waste. You are shifting the industry away from those who live here, who work here, and care about the service we provide and where those products go. You are falling for a falsified marketing campaign. Don't be manipulated by the orange colors and fancy boxes. The garbage haulers can provide this service with greater ease, equity, and transparency. Do not allow Ridwell to operate. Support the garbage and recycling companies who have for so many years supported you. We are here, we are ready, and we will never give up on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I gotta find my notes. Aaron, do we close the public meeting and open it to comments, or does anybody?
So the meeting would stay open to allow for those in the attendee pool who would like to comment. We can give them their 2 minutes. And there are several that have their hands raised at this point. If you'd like to proceed.
So how
can we ask that the WCHA presenters mute and turn off their cameras, and then we can invite the attendees back, and then once we close the public hearing, we will open it up for questions if the committee has any. Thank you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as the hands were raised, it looks like it's going in order raised, not alphabetical order. So if you'd like, Ken, I can start at the top. And
right, I think you call on the person and we'll just go from there. And just make sure you got every name that's raised their hand, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. I'm going to share my screen to pull up the timer as well. It's a new process, so please bear with me. I need to see if I can find the attendees.
How many people do you have on the list of people who want to talk?
Well, unfortunately, when I share my screen, I lose my ability to see the attendee pool.
Of course, that's the one for you.
That doesn't work well. So
like we currently have 12 folks.
Looks like 12.
12. Okay, that's fine.
Could I invite Paku to, Paku, can you start at the top of the list and just call and unmute that person and they can introduce themselves?
Definitely. Let me see. Kathy Jarrett, if you would like to speak, you're at the top of the list. Can she?
I think if you say next to her name, Paku, it says allowed to talk is a function on the participant list.
Yeah, I don't have that function.
Okay, I'll take care of that then. Okay. So Kathy Jarrett, we're going to put you into the list. Can you unmute and see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm a Tigard resident, and I heard about Ridwell, and it sounded terrific to me that someone was taking the initiative to collect items that nobody else was collecting. It's interesting to hear both sides of the argument, but I guess what I want to ask of the longstanding waste removal companies is, why haven't you done this until now? I think the interest is out there, and I haven't heard any information about how much you would charge extra for this service, nor have I heard where you would be taking these collectibles, whereas Ridwell does give that information. So would you be collecting all of the things that they collect? Would it be at a lesser fee than they charge? How would you be providing a way for us to collect those items and put them out separately from other waste materials? So it kind of sounds to me like Ridwell has already invented the wheel and that they know how to do it efficiently. So I don't know why the other companies think that they can do it any better or more cheaply when this company already has the process figured out. So would you actually be saving us money as well as saving the planet? Because I'm sorry, you companies are in it for the money also. So I don't know that that argument flies. So I'd love to hear why you would do any better than Ridwell would at any cheaper cost.
Tom?
Yes,
Tom?
Ken? Yep.
We have proposals from Beth Vargas Duncan on behalf of the haulers, and we have a formal document from Ridwell. Are those on the website?
Yes, they are. And in regards to the questions, we will take the public comment, and thank you, Kathy, for your comments. And if the committee wants to seek a response to those comments after the public hearing, we can work through that. So we appreciate your input and thank you very much. And so do we want to go through the next commenter?
Tom,
Yep.
Aaron just gave me right, so if
Okay.
you go ahead and take it over, I can.
Thanks, Baku.
Next on the list is Kimberly. If I unmute you so you can speak.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
My name is Kimberlyrix White, and I live in Washington County here in Beaverton. And I just want to say that in all the years that I've lived here in Washington County, recycling has gotten more difficult, not easier. And I know that the markets have shifted, but Ridwell has stepped into the gap as any smaller partner can to give me the service that I need. And I have felt much better about, my experience has been much better since I've had access to Ridwell's services. One of the things I appreciate most is that extra category where I know I'm partnering with community organizations, and I can see like the books. And recently I gave some old jewelry for Rosehaven. I have worked with Rosehaven in other ways, and it was great to be able to have that kind of community connection. I see them working very hard to give not only the consumers what they need, but to also connect us to those community services and organizations. And that has been incredibly important to me. And yeah, I just have to say, haulers, you've had the opportunity to do this forever, and you don't step up until somebody else steps into the gap. And so many of your arguments for me personally don't hold any water whatsoever. Ridwell has literally changed the way I relate to my community. It has changed the way I relate to what I buy and how I buy it. I can buy more items from local vendors and businesses because I know that I can deal with those, with the packaging in a way that's going to be much more responsible. And I can see clearly who Ridwell is partnering with and how those materials are being used. I also appreciate the fact that I can opt in and out of a service. They don't come to my house if I don't need a pickup. So I feel like they are a model of efficiency, and I really want to continue doing business with Ridwell. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. So the next person is Mike Lichtner. I'm so sorry if I butcher your last name, but you are up next and you can go ahead and speak.
Thank you. My name is Mike Lichtner. The Opportunity to Recycle Act, ORS 459, is the foundation of the recycling programs in the state of Oregon. This act provides the opportunity to recycle to all residents in an equitable, affordable, and consistent way. With the cooperation of all involved, monthly recycling was started. Each county and city began with a monthly collection program of paper, cardboard, tin, and glass. Then it became more frequent. Yard debris and scrap paper were added later, then plastic bottles and milk jugs. The program then evolved into what it is today with increased material volumes from customers and efficiency for garbage companies. Every garbage company in the county responded when the county asked for more service. Every time the program was expanded, the county, the processors, and the hauling companies worked together to improve recycling programs with the lowest possible cost to the residents. The haulers do provide on-call collection service to the customers who need less frequent service on a smaller level. We also provide bulky waste collection of appliances, furniture, couches, whatever else may need that's too big for the garbage can. County residents have invested in this complete infrastructure, which serves them extremely well and will continue to do so as we go forward. We've seen in the past that third-party companies have come in to circumvent the collection system when it is convenient or profitable for them to cherry pick the more desirable or profitable materials, such as when there are strong markets for cardboard and office paper, or when those markets change, the customers are left without a service provider and contact the haulers to get the recycling programs going again. Fragmenting the system will only take us backwards to where recycling only occurs when it's convenient for the collector to do so, to the detriment of the customers. We have always responded to requests for additional recycling. We stand ready to provide any collection service. It's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
The next person is Margaret Monty. You can speak.
Thank you. My name is Margot Monty. I live in the little finger of tiger that sticks up in the middle of nowhere in Multnomah County. As we begin to emerge from this pandemic and take stock of the stark realities of the country's social, economic, and environmental challenges, our best strategy is to openly acknowledge and face them all together with new eyes, creative ideas, and the mindset that we must succeed. We must find ways to create more cohesive communities and raise public awareness about resource conservation. We must all be conscious of the impact our every action has on this planet, which we share with so many other incredible species, and which will sustain us if we treat it with respect. We must be innovative in finding new ways to conserve the usable resources that for many years have just ended up as mountains of polluting tonnage in landfills simply because it was just easier to throw things away and forget about them. We have made huge strides in recycling and repurposing materials over the past 30 years, and the time is right now to take it to the next level and find new ways to turn waste into usable resources. As far as I understand, the people at Ridwell are taking that step. They see opportunities to affect positive change around how we manage our waste and have the dynamic functionality to respond accordingly to rapidly changing conditions as options for various materials are explored. It sounds like they are committed to collaboration, not competition with any like-minded entities, public or private, and can be a functional stopgap whose demonstrated successes can eventually be adopted into new public policy. As their system is already in place in several locations, granting Ridwell this exemption in Washington County will hasten the reduction in plastics, styrofoam, and other materials going to the landfills, increase the potential for new local markets and industry to be developed around them, and permit the emergence of robust communities around the new living wage jobs to happen sooner rather than later until public policy can be amended. I request that this exemption be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot.
Next is David Schmidt. David, can you click to unmute yourself?
I apologize. Thank you for the time. I'm a business representative for Teamsters Local 305 and represent roughly about 300 drivers out in the Washington County area. We're in full support of the haulers on this issue. What I'm hearing is feedback from both parties, but what this boils down to is regulations. I also represent the cab companies in the Portland metro area, and I see a lot of the same similarities here when it comes to the impact of Uber and Lyft a few years ago. The concern is the drivers that currently work for these haulers are under regulations. You will not have this with Ridwell. And that's a big, large concern. These are professional drivers that are in your communities, in your respected cities on a daily basis. You do not want the impact of deregulation on this market. I want to commend the presentation of Dean, Kristen, and Lexi. That was phenomenal. We're in full support on maintaining my members going forward with their respected labor agreements, and we back the haulers 100%. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Great. Next is KJ Lewis. KJ, you can speak now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Chairfoot and GRAC members. My name is KJ Lewis, and I'm the Municipal Relationship Manager for Republic Services. Just to remind the previous speaker, the haulers can pick up what the jurisdiction determines, as you'll hear in my comments after this, but just want to draw your attention to that. I'd like you to know that our company and all of the garbage collectors and AKA haulers here value our long-standing relationship with the county and our customers. Our employees both live in and work in the communities we serve. We've continued to serve Washington County residents through a global pandemic, the devastating wildfires of 2020, and an unprecedented ice storm. Speaking on behalf of our drivers who serve this community on the ground, it's an honor to work in Washington County. The committee should understand that haulers will pick up what is determined to be permissible by the code of the jurisdiction where we work. Should the community jurisdiction decide that it would like an expanded service offered, the haulers will happily find a way to comply. Even now, different services are offered in other nearby places in Oregon and around the US. In Marion County, for example, haulers like us already pick up batteries at the curb. Residents place their batteries in a bag within the glass bin, and the driver puts the glass in one part of the truck and the batteries in another. This serves two purposes: customer convenience and fire prevention. It's very simple, easy, and available to all residents. There's no reason a regulated service like curbside battery pickup would work in rural Marion County and not in unincorporated Washington County. Some companies like ours also currently offer prepaid, pre-addressed mail-in bulb programs. Customers can request different special boxes for different bulb types, but we accept CFLs, incandescents, LED 2 and 4 pin bulbs, and ballasts. These bulbs are then mailed from the customer's home and recycled, and the mercury is recovered and reused. This program is convenient for the customer and a safe way to handle dangerous material like mercury-containing bulbs. In other parts of the country, services like the one being proposed by the haulers here tonight are already in place, and customers can recycle items that are not currently on Washington County's list of recyclables. Keep in mind that recycling depends on a viable market for the local areas. This can be different depending on where processors are located within the country or how they are exported. I reiterate that haulers will haul what the customers want us to if the county and the GRAC approve, providing there is a viable market for the material. This is the responsible thing to do. The haulers are working within the regulated—
AJ, your 2 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Sorry.
Thank you.
Next up is Anthony Garbarino.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not able to turn my camera on for some reason. Oh, well. Hey, so I had a statement prepared, but my name is Anthony Garbarino, sorry, co-owner of Garino Disposal and Recycling. I'd just like to touch on a couple of things that came up in the Q&A session. I think my statement can be boiled down to one topic. Kathy, to your question, and I apologize, I think there's been some confusion. The haulers gave a presentation to Washington County staff offering a service similar to the one that Ridwell offers. And Kathy, to your question, yes, we have end markets established for every commodity. We can pick up the identical list that Ridwell picks up for a cheaper price. The rate that we've thrown out is $10. We're waiting to hear back from the county on that. And Kim, to your question that we had our chance, another hauler in Washington County approached the city of Beaverton years ago and asked to do a portside program and was rejected by the city. And also so this is just unincorporated Washington County. So for you guys in Beaverton and Tigard, you'd have to speak to city of Beaverton and city of Tigard. Anyways, my whole thing on Ridwell, I mean, I think they deliver a great message, but the thing that I would really just like to hit home is asking why. Why do they not want to be regulated? Why do they want to be exempt from the system as a whole? I think there are some major concerns there that they just think they could come in and say, hey, you know, we see how the rules are played, but we disagree, and this is how we're going to do it. I think the marketing message is allowing a lot of people to buy in. I think the service is great. I'd be happy to offer it if the county enabled us. This is what citizens clearly want. We'd be happy to turn it on and launch this. But again, I would ask, why are they so adamant about not wanting to be regulated? In my opinion, it's because they have venture capitalist backing and they need to support their margins. And Kathy, that kind of touches to your point as well. Like, yes, everyone's in it for the money. This is our livelihood, but we have no investors to report to. Our revenues are driven by direct cost reports that are submitted to the county, and then the county establishes fair rates for everyone and ensures equitable service for all. 3, 2, 1. Take it over, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next is Aaron Gray.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Aaron Gray. I'm a resident of Tigard in Washington County. I'm here tonight to lend my voice in favor of allowing Ridwell to operate in Washington County. I've actually been using Ridwell for several months due to the fact that my partner lives in Portland. I save up my Ridwell items and take them to her house every week or so for her to put in her Ridwell box. And just to be able to recycle the plastic film alone, I would happily pay the subscription fee. So much plastic goes into the waste stream, and it's not sustainable, as many people have said. So I implore the committee to act in the best interest of the community and the environment rather than in the sole interest of the hauler lobby. Ridwell offers a net positive to the community and creates no negative impact in the hauler's business. Ridwell only collects categories of items that the haulers cannot or do not for whatever reason. Further, if Ridwell were to develop, or if the hauler were to succeed in creating a sustainable market for a particular category, the hauler could then take advantage of that, add that category to their stream of normally collected recycling, and at that point, Ridwell would cease collecting it, as I understand it. While the haulers have proposed their own version of Ridwell in a competing bid, the staff report itself deemed what the haulers have proposed to be impermissible under state law. In my view, there's an opportunity here for Ridwell and the haulers to coexist and work together for the betterment of Washington County. Please do the right thing for the community and for the environment and allow Ridwell to operate. Future generations are watching, and I'm anxious to get my Ridwell box. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Rich Witzel. Okay, Rich, you can go.
You'll need to unmute yourself too, Rich, I think.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I was working on my mouse wouldn't work. So cool. My name is Rich Whitesell. I'm a Teamsters Union member, driver, president, and co-owner of SWATCO Sanitary Service. SWATCO is a union hauler that serves rural Western Washington County. My great-grandfather, Heinrich Whitesell, started a garbage and recycling company in the Lads Addition neighborhood of Portland in 1913. My family has been serving ever since. During all those 108 years, source-separated recycling collection has been a key component of the business. Currently, our system is what is known as a dual-stream recycling system, but it is really a quad stream with mixed paper, plastics, and metals in a bin, while glass, motor oil, and yard debris are collected as source-separated items. Our businesses and collection systems are adept at picking up source-separated materials. We have for decades, even centuries, experience collecting them. During the 70s and 80s in Portland, where I hauled garbage and recycling as a teenager, the city was not yet franchised and modern recycling was just beginning. Haulers inefficiently crisscrossed each other's routes through the city, and service level between haulers was uneven at best. We have all heard of food deserts in the neighborhoods with high poverty rates, but there were also recycling service deserts in these same areas. Few haulers wanted to service high poverty areas, and access to recycling services was restricted in those neighborhoods. This would result in higher monthly garbage and recycling service prices being charged in underserved areas, while privileged areas had cheaper rates and better access to recycling services. The progressive leaders of our communities saw franchising with regulated uniform service standards and rates as the solution to this inequity. Granting an exemption to collect expanded recycling is not necessary to the implementation of the county solid waste rules, and is in fact detrimental to implementing well-regulated equitable plans. Therefore, I support franchise system. I support regulated uniform services to the citizens of Washington County. I support Washington County staff and the franchise haulers working jointly to provide an equitable, sustainable, expanded recycling service for all the citizens of Washington County. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Next is Mary Ross. Mary, if you can unmute yourself. Mary? Mary?
Yes, can you hear?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mary Ross, and I live in Washington County. I am very passionate about keeping things local and about recycling. Over the last 20 years, I have lived in areas where I've had the 3 disposal companies, Garino, Pride, and Waste Management. Where I appreciate all that they do, I have noticed that recycling keeps getting more limited and more difficult. Also, I don't remember ever being told that my batteries, clamshells, plastic packaging from Amazon, or styrofoam can be picked up at my door or at curbside until Ridwell. I ask you that you let Ridwell continue and let your community members choose. I choose to pay Ridwell to take my hard to recycle materials. Please let your community members decide how we want to recycle. Thank you.
Next is Trina Delane. Trina, I unmute you, so please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yes, hi. I live in unincorporated Washington County, just north of the Metzger area. And again, as the last caller said, I don't recall having any offering from our local waste haulers to particularly care about these unmet needs in the recycling. I live just a mile of the old Far West location that, if anyone's familiar, just off 217 and Denny, had recycling categories for anything you could think of, was so highly utilized that they would have to shut down at times to catch up. And of course, that was a global system that went, under all of us and was no longer functioning. But there's a high need, there's a big concern. Like others have said, we're consumers. I respect and appreciate Waste Management, the services they provide, but again, they've not offered to handle this where there's a clear need and want in the community. And I would really like for you to consider Ridwell's request and honor whatever it takes to get them up and running in our area, as many other areas have allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lindsay Washburn. You can unmute yourself now.
Hi there. Oh. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Washburn, and I live in Metzger in unincorporated Washington County. And I think we've heard a lot of arguments kind of making this an either or, choosing Ridwell or choosing the haulers. And that's really not what this argument is about. This is about an exemption to the law, which currently prohibits the haulers as well from picking up hard to recycle items. So I think what we need to remember is that Ridwell is asking for this exemption, not just for them, not for them to have special privileges or special contracts. They're asking for an exemption so that these hard to recycle items can be picked up. And this actually benefits the haulers as well as Ridwell. So if the exemption is denied, no one can pick up these items. So as a community member, I would ask the committee to consider the law and consider this exemption that would allow anyone to pick up these hard to recycle items. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next is Hassan, and I apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly. Oh, it looks like you just went off. So next is Brandon Phillips. Brandon, can you hear us? Brandon?
Hi, is this better?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Great. Hi, I'm Nisha George. I'm a resident of the Bethany area, parent and community member. I moved from another county this past summer that offered curbside recycling of film plastic, used clothing, as well as municipal compost. And when I moved here, I asked our local hauler if they had these options, and I was met with very sad information that it was not offered. There's obvious demand for the services that Ridwell supports, The film plastic pickup locations by grocery stores are always full. No one else is offering pickups for things like clamshells and clothing that's too worn to be reused. The haulers' argument seems to complain that they wanted to offer more services, but the county has said no. So my question is, what is blocking the county from expanding the list of what is permissible to pick up? Is there a way to expand the regulation so Ridwell and the haulers can both pick up and the consumer can choose what option works best for them? I work in the startup industry, and I think it's important for the incumbents to feel a little pressure from startups to innovate. But for the counties to then follow that with expanding the regulation to encourage competition. This shouldn't be a startups versus the incumbents argument. I think we need to do better as a county to make it a situation where the consumers have options to choose, and both of these organizations can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Heather Griffel.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. I'm an unincorporated Washington County resident, and I'm a Ridwell customer. I see these products as complementary products rather than competitive products. I've made no changes to my trash service. I have adopted the Ridwell product, and I appreciate how I can support local nonprofits and reduce waste at the same time. I'd like to respond to two claims that the Teamsters and the waste haulers have made. First, the haulers have made comments about the fact that they're local companies and Ridwell is an out-of-state company that reports to investors. My waste hauler is Waste Management, and they're headquartered in Houston, Texas. I think Ridwell is more local than a company that's headquartered in Houston, Texas. And Waste Management's also a publicly traded company, and they report to their investors and their board of directors in the form of their shareholders and their board of directors. So the second is Teamsters are referring to the unregulated drivers on our streets. And I find that relatively laughable in today's environment where Amazon's contracting with anybody who will deliver packages. We've got people delivering food through DoorDash or Uber Eats. So we've got a lot of unregulated drivers on our streets. I don't understand why having somebody meet our needs for recycling is a problem. And while the county's determined that the time was not right for expanded service, consumers have decided that the time is right for us and we shouldn't be restricted from doing so. So I support this exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next is Jeff Murray. Jeff, you can speak now. Unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair Foote and members of the GRAC. It's great to see you guys again. My name is Jeff Murray. I'm Director of Business Development for EFI Recycling. We provide service. EFI is a locally owned business by the Jenkins family. We receive, sort, and market recyclables collected throughout the metro region and as well as the state as a whole. As for me, I've been in the garbage and recycling business since the 70s. I was really young. I have worked in the solid waste and recycling industry since my freshman year in college. I worked in garbage collection for the first 15 years, and then the last almost 30 years has been in the recycling processing side. A significant amount of my career has been based in Washington County. I've served on several solid waste advisory committees throughout the metro region and served for quite some time on the very committee that we're looking at today. I recently served on the EEQ's Recycling Steering Committee to help create legislation to help modernize Oregon's recycling system. I had a cute little story I was going to tell, but I'm not going to. I'm going to skip down to what I think is more important. This is not about Ridwell. This is about an exemption for needing a solid waste certificate to collect solid waste. I'm very concerned that Washington County is giving the consideration to this exemption. It flies in the face of why franchising was established. There are several reasons for the franchise system, why this franchise system was created. Just a few are number one, public health and safety, fair and equitable service for all residents, whether in a city or in a rural area, for reasonable rates. Reassure the residents that all laws are being followed, employees are working under safe working conditions, etc. I am very concerned that the county is willing to create this exemption based on a single company that has only existed for a few short years. I have no issues with Ridwell. I don't know Ridwell, but ultimately this is not about Ridwell. It is about deregulating a significant part of the solid waste system, as I said before.
Sorry, Jeff, your time is up. So
Okay,
I'm going
I
to
got enough here.
Thank you. Next is Kristen Mitchell. Kristen, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. My name is Kristen Mitchell. I'm the Executive Director of Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association, and I'm familiar with the companies that are speaking on behalf of the Washington County Haulers Association as members of the broader statewide association. I want to just echo the comments that Jeff Murray just said. An exemption it's about this exemption in general, not just about this company. If it's true that the exemption would be across the service and not just across the company, then really in effect what you're saying is that anyone can provide this type of service out there, and it would not just be a company such as Ridwell. It could be anybody with a pickup truck and a plan, or at least what they think is a plan. I don't think that these are the kinds of items that you want to be subject to less regulation. In fact, I think they probably need to be subject to more regulation. The reason these are the kinds of items that you have not seen in your traditional recycling programs that you have curbside is because they are not traditional. They are not markets that are established. They are items that are more difficult to recovery. So it takes more effort to ensure that what you actually sell to a customer is what they are really truly buying, to ensure that the materials are collected safely, that they are collected in a way that ensures environmental benefits, not environmental problems. And we have seen that in previous ideas that sound great, but don't produce what you expect. Now, there have been comments about why wasn't this done before, and I think maybe it was just a timing issue. It's the time now to deal with this. The haulers have a plan to do that. When the plan was given earlier to others, at the county, it wasn't accepted, but I think that's a timing thing and that we're beyond that now. And the best result is to keep it within the regulated system so you can be ensured that what you're doing with the material is the right thing to do. It just doesn't make you feel good. It actually is the right thing. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so next is Ed Berg. Ed, I've unmute you so you can speak now.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity. I've lived for about 20 years in the Cedar Mill area of unincorporated Washington County. I've been a customer of Walker Garbage Service and more recently Ridwell. I appreciate both of the services that are provided. You know, for the 20 years, my garbage and recycling things have been picked up faithfully, and I've had no problems with that. But also during that entire 20 years, I've never been offered any other additional services. I used to take quite a number of things to the Far West Recycling before that shut down. And so after that, it was difficult to know what to do with a lot of the things that I didn't want to throw away. So I was quite happy when Ridwell came along, and so far have been quite pleased with their service and what they offered. You know, it sounds like there's definitely some discussion that needs to happen, and a lot of these regulated services maybe have fallen behind or laws haven't kept up. But it doesn't seem to me that it makes sense to penalize a company that's doing something successfully. You know, people can probably work these things out and get along. If you don't approve the exemption, it seems like the only thing that's going to happen is a service that is working pretty well for a lot of people will go away in Washington County, and it will just appear that we want to go backwards in time and not recycle these items easily, which doesn't make much sense to me. So I would like to see the exemption approved, and I'd like to see everybody try to work together moving forward in the future rather than arguing or trying to protect turf or things like that. That just doesn't leave a good taste in anybody's mouth. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is Raphael. You can speak now. Unmute yourself and speak, please.
Hi, thank you for listening, but I would just like to have you please clarify. You say there's an exemption that Ridwell we get, but does this exemption apply to anybody? So I could just decide that I would go and try to recruit customers and just pick up what I wanted to pick up, charge what I wanted to pick up, or is this exemption only applied to Ridwell? So
Raphael, we're not providing answers to public questions at this point, and we don't really have an answer to that question. So if you have comments to share with the committee, this is your opportunity to do that.
So, okay, so that's a question. The other thing, we're waste management, and over the years, what we've seen is the opportunity to recycle go away. We don't take this anymore. We don't take that anymore, and it just goes into the landfill. And Ridwell has come along and given us an opportunity to recycle things that are harmful to the environment. So I'm asking you, please, to grant this exemption for Ridwell. There's been many people speaking on Ridwell's behalf, and I agree wholeheartedly with what they've said. And I understand some of the union discussions, but they still have their jobs. So please, grant this exemption for Ridwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. And I see in the Q&A section that Lexi Garino appears to be answering a Q&A question. Can I ask you to refrain from that, Lexi, please, as you're not on the advisory committee, and this is an opportunity for the advisory committee to have a Q&A. Thank you. I apologize for that.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the phone number, and Erin is going to go ahead and unmute those that had called in.
Yeah, we've gone through everyone who's had an opportunity to raise their hand. I just want to make sure the caller doesn't have any questions, and then we can move forward. If you're on the phone and you wanted to speak, you have the opportunity to unmute at this time. And then we can, if you don't have any questions, that's fine. You're welcome to just remain silent. We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, hearing none, I say we move forward.
I think that is all of our public comment, Chair Foote. So if you want to close the public hearing, we can move into the next steps. And you are muted, sir.
That's because I had to cough. Sorry. The public portion of the meeting is closed. So how do we proceed now?
So now is the opportunity for the committee to have conversations and deliberations. We acknowledge that this was a lot of information that was just shared with everybody. We don't expect the advisory committee to have any closure this evening. We do feel that it would be a good opportunity for the committee to have a discussion amongst each other. If you have questions for either Ridwell or the Washington County Hauler Association, you may ask those. And if Ken, you would like to allow an exchange, that would be acceptable. And ultimately there is, if a committee member would like to make a motion, that is always an option. A motion could be made, and if seconded, the committee could vote on that motion, and it could be a motion directing staff to make findings or do something else along those lines. And I see Brad turned his camera back on, and maybe he has a little bit more input about what I just explained.
No, Tom, I think you did a good job. This is your opportunity as an advisory committee to deliberate, ask questions, discuss, and it's really in your hands right now.
Staff has sent out, at least to me at least, a number of all of the written comments they received, as well as the proposals from both. So if all of the committee have received those, and we have not received those, contact Kathy Folsom. She's the go-to person for that.
Let's say, Ken, we did send it to the whole list, so everybody should have
that's what
received
I
them. And I
thought.
think we got 10 written comments before the public hearing.
Okay, and I've printed them out here and I've read them and everything. I think I'm probably the longest serving. I was really glad to see Jeff Murray comment. I miss having him on the committee, and he is probably the most knowledgeable, articulate garbage person I know. But the three folks from the industry did a great job too. I was very impressed. And yes, Allied, Republic, and Waste Management are all stock companies with investors and all the rest of it. But most of the, not most, but many of the people who are still left in the business are in fact multi-generational family businesses. And I don't think that that is a relevant issue, because Ridwell is no more local than, I mean, Seattle is Seattle, and I don't feel so, I don't sit and feel that Boeing or Microsoft are local companies, and I'm not sure Ridwell should not be lumped in with them. So anyway, the floor is open to discussion to anybody who wants to comment one way or the other. Go ahead, Sandra.
Tom, can you explain about the hauler certificates? As far as I understand, there are 9 of them, and they're all owned by the haulers, so there are no more available. Is that correct?
So the certificate program, which is essentially the same thing as a franchise system, is the system the county uses to regulate solid waste collection. And so there are 9 certificate holders. They are all granted exclusive rights to collect solid waste in certain geographic areas. And that is essentially a regulated monopoly system. In place of the open market competition, the county does set rules and rates for the provision of that services, as been kind of alluded to or explained throughout the meeting. So there are every area in the county is currently covered by a collection certificate. So there are no certificates available, if that's what the question is.
So if even Ridwell wants to get a certificate, they wouldn't be able to. So it's not that they don't want to, it's just they can't.
Well, not necessarily. The county code includes 2 types of limited purpose certificates written into the code, which are a little bit different than the regular certificate that the collection providers have. Those certificates require that there are certain types of wastes or waste types of volumes or types that the haulers are unable to or cannot collect. And then a limited purpose certificate may be provided in that sense. Historically, that has been, say, a large industrial generator of waste produces a really unique, challenging waste stream. That has some precedent in the past where a special certificate or a limited purpose certificate was issued for the collection of that material. In this situation, I don't think that's an opportunity or an option, as the haulers have presented in this conversation that they are claiming that they are able to and are interested in collecting this service. So in that case, there would not be a limited or special service certificate option.
However, I want to comment that there are different economic models that are used to regulate industries. So the franchise method is one of them. The aviation industry has chosen a different one, in which they basically specify what the level of service have to be, the minimum requirements you have to meet, you know, what level of licensing the pilots have to have, the mechanics that work on the airplanes and everything else. But anybody who was brave enough to jump into it can set up and do something. And we see them come and go fairly frequently. It's in spite of the fact that it's a very closely regulated industry, it's still dog eat dog and not a guarantee of economic success at all. So one of the things that's unique about the Washington County proposal is we grant franchises essentially monopolies, because there was a strong public outcry about having the chaos that goes with having multiple haulers, many haulers. I have friends in the Minneapolis area who I mention from time to time, but he has access to 13 haulers that come by his house, 13, for a rate slightly less than or slightly more than half of what we pay for essentially the same service. So there's two sides to that coin. So there are other ways that the county could choose to regulate haulers and essentially set aside categories that this company can access this category of materials only. But there are some restrictions to go with it, and that is they have to service, they can't pick and choose the high density, high income areas and refrain from providing service. It's in the public interest to have and health and safety interest, and that's why it's part of health and safety, to have garbage picked up and hauled away from everywhere, not just from the rich people's houses. And so we can't have a service that just services Lake Oswego and dense parts of West Portland. We've got to service places outside of North Plains and outside of Banks that are part of our jurisdiction. And the ideal way is to make sure the same haulers are doing it all. We can't force a hauler to operate at a loss. And so we have to be cognizant of our responsibility to assure the service is available on a timely, economical basis to everybody in the county.
And and maybe Brad can speak to this a little bit more, but we don't need to, we're not going to go down this road, I think, this evening, but our understanding of the code language is the county could put guardrails on an exemption. It's not the Wild West opens up and everything gets, erodes the entire certificate or franchise system. So the county could make requirements like it has to be recycled, it has to be demonstrated that can be recycled, it has to be something that's not already collected by the haulers. So there are opportunities for the county to put guardrails on an exemption of that type. So it doesn't have to just be a totally open system like it could be envisioned, I guess.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to point out as well. Brad, do you have any comments?
No, I mean, Tom is correct that that if you chose to give this exemption, that there are guardrails that you could put on. And as Tom suggested, one of them, if you choose to go this route, would be that it doesn't go into the garbage, into the landfill. It goes and is truly recycled. And I would point out that the exemption request is to have this hard to recycle material that anybody could come in and provide this services. It's not just Ridwell. So in fact, it could be, I think there's another facility, James Recycling, that could do this as well in unincorporated Washington County. The haulers could do it in an unregulated manner, or somebody else.
So would that mean that I'm concerned about getting the service provided to the low density areas that are hard to service. And if somebody comes in and picks off, one of the things we discovered with the aviation deregulation was that people immediately jumped in and started servicing the high density markets, and the places that had been supported by a structured rate system similar to what we had just lost service. You can't get an airline ticket out to Pendleton or a Bend. It just doesn't happen. And so that's the downside to allowing competition to essentially cherry pick what they feel is the service they can provide and nobody else. Remember, for 55 cents, we can send a letter to anywhere in the country, including the far outest reaches of Alaska, and try to send a package just across Portland on UPS or just anything across town on UPS, and it's going to cost you multiple times more. And if you want to send it a long ways, it's a lot more. And so the difference in the rate structures is exemplified by that. And so essentially the post office is the government, but the idea that it provides service to everywhere in the country is something we have to do with garbage. That's part of our charge, is to make sure that everybody's garbage gets picked up. And
I think, Ken, it's important to note, and you mentioned this earlier too, we can't I don't think if it's unregulated or if it's exempted, you can't force someone then to provide a service in a certain area. So, and Brad, you could correct me if I'm wrong there. So I think you're correct there that some areas might not receive the service. It is also important that there is a cost associated with collecting this service, regardless of who provides that service. So if Ridwell provides it, it's a cost, it's an unregulated cost. We don't know what their profit margins is or what their costs are because they're not a regulated business. If the haulers provide the service, there's a cost as well. So there is a high cost barrier. I heard a lot of comments about the county not doing this or the haulers not offering the service. And I will say that the haulers do offer services under county rules and regulations, and we provide services consistently across the region, and we identify the most high priority materials that have consistent, stable, steady markets that we're confident that continue to be recycled. So we don't have clamshells in our recycling system because there is not a stable market. Ridwell appears to have found a market for that, but we don't know if that market will be here next month. And in terms of starting and stopping a material into a recycling program, like what we manage the franchise collection system, we can't turn things on and off every other month because the markets are not stable. So that is the hallmark of what goes in the roll cart. And if there's an expanded service option offered by the haulers, there will be a cost associated with that too. And that cost is also a barrier of entry potentially. Unless that cost is spread out across the customer base, then you're asking all customers to pay those costs for those extra services. And I think in our assessment that there's higher valuable materials, collecting food waste might be a higher priority and might be better for the environmental benefit than plastic film and the difficulty associated with that. So these are important considerations, and knowing that, and I will stand up and say that the haulers are providing the service under the county's rules, and those materials are selected for a reason, and they're selected because we're confident and that they are stable and material to collect, and they're the right materials to collect. And there's a process that goes into determining those materials too.
Sandra, did you have a comment? I thought you saw your hand up, but. No.
I was actually going to say what you said, that, you know, we want to make sure this is provided to everybody. You know, the Tommy started out the meeting saying there was concern about the increased costs, but what I'm hearing from people that want Ridwell are saying they're not concerned about the cost. So let's figure a way to spread this out and keep it regulated. There's a reason. I mean, in all the meetings that I've sat in and the RSC, it's more regulations. We want to be sure things are handled. We want to make sure people are being, you know, treated equitably. And so, you know, I'm not sure why the exemption, if there's another path to get in there.
We would be concerned about making everybody pay for it regardless of whether they choose to participate in it. And that's not necessarily the proposal the Haulers Association has offered either. We want to make sure that customers that want it could have access to it in a way. We don't feel like it's the type of program that we would want everybody to fund regardless of whether or not they feel like they want to participate in it. So that is a different approach. So those are two approaches. The curbside recycling program right now is funded by the system. Everybody pays their share of the costs and everybody gets to benefit from it. This type of service appears to be highly desired by a segment of the community, but not necessarily the whole community. So we're currently in the position where we don't know if it's the right programmatic decision to incorporate it into the system and have everybody pay for it, because it would take a pretty substantial rate increase to achieve that.
Well, I think I saw in one of the, either your summary or that it was the potential to, it would be a start at similar to how it is, and then down the road as it grew, you can blend it in a little bit better.
That's kind of how the Hauler Association proposed that to us. Yeah. And I see Beth has her hand up too. So.
Hi, thanks. You know, I just wanted to, let's see if I can get my hand down. It's a distraction. So I think it was great to hear all of the information and interest in this. I just want to kind of clarify a little bit of the history on this. So Dean Camphor was right that Waste Management came to their couple of cities within the Washington County years ago with a very similar offer of service. And at that time, as I understand it, the jurisdictions had the same concerns that they have now, that the cost might be prohibitive. So and Tom's right, that the county or the city, however the case may be, right now, you know, we're with Washington County, they make the decisions and you know, work through elected officials through this process to decide what is collected by the haulers. The haulers don't have the final say. We do what we're directed to do. And as this has come up and we started seeing community interest and that folks might be willing to pay for this, the haulers put together a presentation and we presented it to staff and outlined how we could, as haulers, provide this service. And initially, because we, just like Ridwell, they have a subscription service, you have to commit, they go into communities where they can find so many hundreds of customers willing to pay. And so for our approach, we would come in and perhaps start as an on-call service and start with those persons that are interested. This is not new to garbage collectors, garbage and recycling collectors. Those who've been in this, been customers for 20 years know that we started recycling in this time. I used to be a regulator in Tom's kind of shoes with the city of Salem. And I was working for the city of Salem regulating the garbage haulers when we started curbside recycling in the blue cart. And I'm not that old. So we do offer new services coming along, and we follow what we're directed, what should go in the blue cart, what should not go in the blue cart. In different areas, we do pick up different materials. In Marion County, down in Salem area, batteries are collected, as KJ pointed out in her testimony. We are flexible, we are nimble, we can respond to this. We are professionals, we are unionized. We do have the ability to collect these items, do it safely, get in and out of neighborhoods safely, and to work with our partners on this. So I just want to clear up a little bit of that confusion about who decides what. The community really has a lot of power and say, but I do, the garbage collectors have a lot of concern. Folks have seen it with the franchise system and without the franchise system. And under the franchise system, as Ken pointed out, people get excluded. And this is one reason why it's a highly regulated service, is because just like electricity, just like the internet, you don't want people left out of this service. And with garbage, it creates a real health and human safety issue. We have a shared responsibility. We share values with our community. We share values with our local governments, our cities and counties that regulate us. We believe in service for all at affordable rates with safe professionals at the helm, using environmental protections, compressed natural gas vehicles, all of these things. And those are the things that we work to balance. So I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
And I think for context too, everything you said is correct, Beth, and it's, but this conversation, we're not having a conversation about exempting garbage collection, right? So we're talking about these special materials that are not collected in the system. So I just want to make sure that's known, because I feel like when we're talking about the health and safety impacts and the essential nature of garbage collection service, I wholly agree with that. But I think we need to distinguish the hard to recycle items from the putrescible waste that exists, that creates a kind of a hazard and a risk to the community, and is mandatory that gets picked up. Right now, no one's getting it picked up. They can take it, folks can take it to a recycling depot or a grocery store, and there's not health and safety risks associated with that in that sense, regardless of who's picking it up.
So Tom, I have one other question, and that is, if we were to grant an exemption, would it also apply to the haulers? Can they come in and offer this service to all their people in addition to what, in other words, if somebody wanted to get essentially same service at half the price of what Ridwell's not cheap. I think that's important that people understand. And so it applies only to people who have enough disposable income that they're willing to plunk down some more money and they think garbage is bad enough or recyclable stuff is bad enough, that it's better to have them pick it up when asked than to drive it down to the local depot and drop it off.
So the exemption request from Ridwell was the practice of collecting hard to recycle materials, not who can. So if an exemption was written and it would have guardrails on it, anybody could provide the service, including the current haulers. And I think an example of that is paper shredding. Maybe there's some of our service providers that have paper shredding businesses that are not regulated businesses. They provide those outside of the regulatory system, and the county has no control or oversight into the rates charged or the services provided or anything along those. There might be some confusion, or it does get complex when we get into understanding costs and setting rates. If it was an exempt line of business, those costs would not be able to be in the regulated line of business, and that might influence how a service provider would provide that service. It might be they might have to separate it differently in terms of how they would collect the materials so that those costs don't bleed into the regulated side of the business. But technically, there would be nothing preventing anybody that meets the exemption criteria, whatever they may be, from participating.
I know I asked you once before, but there's a gentleman down in Washington County who collects prunings off trees from orchards and what have you, and grinds it up and makes it into mulch and sells it or delivers it back to the same.
Compensation is the key. So if they're not hauling for compensation, they can haul it. So farmers pick up food from businesses because they feed it to their cattle or their hogs. There's all kinds of examples. There's metal recyclers that are picking up metal for the value of the metal. Some white office paper recyclers that pick up white office paper for the value of the white office paper. So the key is the compensation piece.
Okay.
And if Ridwell was picking up what they were and not charging for it, it wouldn't make sense economically probably for them, but it would not be a violation in the existing rules.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify, the ins and outs of the rules as they now stand. And he is very careful to, as he explained it to me, he is not a hauler. He knows the rule as well. So, okay, thank you. Does anybody else have their hand up or want to make a comment?
Can I speak for a minute, Ken?
Go ahead.
Ashton here. So kind of in a similar vein, I think in the Ridwell presentation, they mentioned like 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Or if you think about like Beaverton Restore, right? I can pay Beaverton Restore to come to my house and pick up tile for about $20. 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I don't know how much they charge, but they pick up, pretty much anything, I think, from my house. And then if you look at some of Ridwell's categories, I know plastic film and clamshells overlap a lot with recyclables, but then you pick up books. Are we classifying book pickup as solid waste as well? Like, is anything I now want to give to somebody, like donate, is it now solid waste simply because I no longer have a use for it? And I think we're very broadly classifying everything here as solid waste, jewelry, and so I guess the question is, are Beaverton Restore and 1-800-GOT-JUNK also, being targeted for violating these rules, or are they also being exempted in some vein?
So it's a really good question, Ashvin. 1-800-GOT-JUNK, let's go first, and that business model was mentioned in Ryan's presentation. 1-800-GOT-JUNK and other junk removal services, they're out there. There's a lot of them. Clean It Up Mark, Rubbish Works, College Hunks, which is one of my favorites. They, the way their service is interpreted in our rules and regulations is that they're providing a junk removal service. So they provide labor to move material and then take it off the property. So the example I like to use is an apartment complex. So if a property manager in an apartment complex had a bunch of bulky waste items they need to dispose of, and they just piled them up on the ground next to their garbage enclosure and called up 1-800-GOT-JUNK and said, come take this bulky waste away. That technically would be a violation of the county code. And our code enforcement program does work with property managers when they do that, because the only service they're offering or they're providing in that sense is a hauling service. Now, if there's an apartment that has a bunch of junk in it and there's a 400-pound television up 3 flights of stairs, and 1-800-GOT-JUNK is called in to remove that material, they're walking up those 3 flights of stairs, they're removing the TV from the living room, they're providing a different service. And in our interpretation is that service of then hauling is ancillary to the service of removing the junk from the property. So this is a nuance that's unique and it's difficult to manage, I think, in a sense. So if a household calls 1-800-GOT-JUNK to come clean their garage out and pull stuff out of the garage, it's technically probably okay. If a household is just throwing materials at the curb and 1-800-GOT-JUNK just drives by and picks it up, it technically probably is a violation of code. For the reuse situations, that's a little bit more unique. Historically, we have not considered an item that is reused kind of entering the solid waste stream. Now, based on the examination that's happened over the last 3 or 4 months with the state on the definition of solid waste, that might be a questionable interpretation. I don't think anyone here, including the service providers or the haulers, want to say that community warehouse come get a couch and that you can help offset the cost for them to drive and get it for you, because they're not throwing the couch away. They're taking that couch back to a furniture bank. So this is another nuance and challenge I think we're going to have to think about and work through and think about how it fits into the system. But I would say it's undetermined essentially on whether what community warehouse or the restore is technically, if they are technically hauling for compensation or not.
Sandra, go ahead. You have your hand up.
I know there are companies that will come and pick up a mattress or appliances at curbside for a fee. So technically that's the same thing.
If they're picking it up to recycle or dispose of it, they're likely violating the code. And
isn't it the only reason Ridwell's being put up on this is because there was a complaint filed against them?
Well,
by a hauler.
We enforce our solid waste control code through a complaint-driven process. So we don't drive around looking for violations, essentially. They come to our attention. So this one was we did have a complaint filed about Ridwell.
That's why we're having this hearing. Because there's other companies, and I know of several, all you have to do is go to Nextdoor and say, hey, I have a mattress. Who can come pick this up for a fee? You'll get people all over the place. And including companies. And I can name some, but I won't name it here. So that's what I wanted to bring out on this.
And we have code enforcement officers that do enforce the solid waste control code. We have some companies that have hauled drop boxes in unincorporated Washington County that we've issued citations to in the past. So, and again, we are complaint driven. We have 2 officers that enforce several different county codes. So we don't really go out and look for solid waste control violations, but there's no doubt that there are likely some happening. And I see Beth had her hand up too.
Oh, go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, I don't want to take all the time, but again, when I was at the city of Salem, 1-800-GOT-JUNK came in, and we did try to figure out a way to make that work, because it's unfortunate when you have a service that the franchised or certificated haulers provide, and then another company comes in and charges double and may not do it as cleanly or safely. Sometimes you don't know, is that item going to be dumped down an alley a mile away, or is it going to be properly handled? So that's why there's regulations on these activities. And yes, the way that government and code enforcement finds out, just like your grass is too tall, somebody needs to make a complaint. So that's what the way the system works. I believe this may be my last meeting with this group because of the vote that happened earlier. Carl Peters and I are being termed out, and there will be one industry representative at this group now going forward. So even though we're on a Zoom, I may be one of those still pictures down there in the future. So I just wanted to say before I left, when I looked at the staff report, staff outlined the issue that I thought we were supposed to be discussing. And Ridwell's following a process now, but they didn't when they came in. They've got 500 customers. I understand that they're servicing right now at least 500. It looks like on Nextdoor there may be some new ones that have come along. I don't know that. I'm not actually on Nextdoor myself, but that's what I'm understanding. And so I would look to see that that the code is being followed. There's a reason, again, why the community, the local government, county created a highly regulated franchise system to protect all of the community and to have fair, reasonable, safe collection of garbage. And, you know, I don't know, anyway, I won't get into reusable items and all of the details that we've already gone over, but in the staff report, just really quickly, it says, the committee will need to evaluate whether the quote practice of collecting these specific wastes, you know, garbage, you know, items that have been discarded by the residents is not necessary to the implementation of the county or regional solid waste management plan. Tom acknowledged the county doesn't have a solid waste plan, but Metro did create the regional waste advisory plan or regional waste plan, sorry. And that's what folks follow. And there's a lot of things in that Ridwell would not need to follow. And the franchise, the certificate holders here do follow those. We helped develop and craft that plan. We support it with the living wages, drivers that have living wages and benefits to them. We have the environmental protections. We provide comprehensive collection services to everyone. We support educational opportunities. We're active in our communities. We pay the franchise fees. Do you realize that franchise fees are often the second largest revenue into a local government beyond property tax? It's a lot of franchise fee money. The garbage haulers are not the only ones that pay it, but it's a significant contribution. There are reasons why Ridwell is asking to be exempt. It's a complex, lot of layers to this. So nothing against people that are learning. I'm happy to help people learn. I'll just have to do it probably not on this committee in the future. So it's been a pleasure to work with everybody. I appreciate, and I may be wrong if I get one more committee meeting, depending on how the scheduling goes, I'd be glad to be back. But I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity and for always listening so well.
Thank you. Are there any other hands raised? I have a hard time seeing hands.
So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but any other committee members like Sue or Vinod, we haven't heard anything from you guys. And if you don't have anything to say or you don't want to say anything, that's perfectly acceptable too. But I want to make sure you get an opportunity if you want to.
No, I said earlier, I mean, I think there's a reason why we have these systems in place. And I worry about opening Pandora's box to issues, but I think we're going to have more discussion about this. I take it, but yeah, I mean, I agree with like what Ken said, and there's, you know, there's reasons why like a facility like ours is regulated so that, you know, we make sure we handle stuff properly, and so I see the value in making sure things are done right, and so that's my concern. It's nothing against Ridwell. You know, the public wants it. We have people willing. The infrastructure is already in place to handle it, and I'm a big fan of using what we have. You know, you use the tools you have.
So are we going to discuss it? The last thing I want to bring up is that there apparently is a concern. The next scheduled meeting would be July 8th, but that conflicts with some other issues within staff. And I'd certainly like to have staff available to attend. So does anybody have any suggestion for an alternate? Did you have one, Tom, that you think do you already know would work for staff?
Yeah, I don't really have an alternate date suggestion, Ken, and I think maybe talking through how we want to tackle this question as a committee is important too. And if we have some next steps, if the committee is not prepared to ask staff to work on findings or make findings, then I think we need to schedule another conversation so we can arrive at that in some way, shape, or form. And maybe Brad can help advise us on where we need to get and where we need to go and how we might be able to get there. Sorry, Brad, if I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, so right now what you have before you is a request for an exemption. You don't have to make a decision today. You can go home, think about it. You got a lot of information, and you could deliberate at your next meeting. or you can, put a proposal on the table and see where it goes. It's really up to you as a group on how you want to pursue this request, on whether you recommend this exemption or not. And I should know, actually, the other thing is one of the parts of the code that it's been talked about briefly, but ultimately, if you will have to make findings of some sort on whatever decision you make. Ridwell presented some proposed findings. I don't know if those have gotten out to you or not. And then, but staff could also assist you with doing findings as well.
Well, I think, and in light of this, I would like to make a motion for everyone to consider, or I don't have to, it has to be a motion because they normally require a vote. But I think I would like to suggest or ask that staff take a look at what has been said this evening and draft a set of findings that we would then present to the county, and then present it to us. And at our next get together, we can use the findings as a framework for a discussion and hopefully come to a conclusion and vote.
The issue with that, Ken, is the findings follow the decision. And if you know what I'm saying,
Okay, maybe we can have them just narrow down the discussion to what we actually have to accomplish, because I feel like a lot of the comments were sort of all over the place, as is always the case with a public meeting. So I think we need, as a committee, to have a better I need to have a better understanding of what exactly a finding looks like and what we're presenting to the county as a finished product.
Yeah, your findings just support a decision. I see Kathy's hand up, so she might
I
have
was
some
just
ideas.
going to maybe make a suggestion as sort of an interim. One thing, maybe if it's helpful, short of actual findings, staff could report back on sort of, the comments and sort of like an additional staff report, possibly, if you think that would be helpful. And you still could deliberate, even at the next meeting, you could have another deliberation and then possibly have a motion and then possibly direct findings. So that's all I was saying, is that there's nothing to stop us from creating some additional documentation if you thought it was helpful.
Yeah, a framework that narrows down the discussion and puts us on topic so that I can then say, no, that's off in the weeds. We don't want to talk about that, and move forward with creating a finding as we've been asked to do, or as the code requires us to do. So I think the next step is to have us sort of get something that puts us all on the same page to discuss what the finding has to be, and then go forward.
Like how broad and narrow does the finding have to be? Like some of the public comments, for instance, were like, maybe we don't want to grant an exemption, but we wanted them to see them side by side. Like, people want choice. So like, we just say like, what is an option that grants Ridwell the opportunity to still proceed in a way that is not damaging to the haulers, or like, for instance, the haulers, haven't necessarily figured out 100% what their service is going to look like. Like, could we actually get like more details on that service? Or I guess there's just still, it's very like, even as all the public commentary said, it's hard to say we're going to get an equivalent service from the haulers, because we can't, it's very hard to see it, right? You don't know the details. You don't know the exact price. It's about this much, And there was, we talked about equitable service, but it didn't give us a price for rural versus non-rural. So it's very difficult to make any kind of decision when you don't have, right? And we definitely don't want to damage the hauler's capability to do something, but at the same time, we want to enable the public to recycle, instead of saying, if nobody can have it, if everybody can have it, then nobody can have it, kind of. So I guess my question is, how vague or how narrow does that does the direction need to be on the finding? I'm still a little bit vague on what the finding actually means. So.
Well, I'm with you. I'm not, it's not narrowed down enough to make it really easy for me. And I sure don't want to be the government agency that comes in and tells a 10-year-old girl she can't sell lemonade on her sidewalk. So, which got national press coverage. So, you know,
Yeah, we know about that one all too well. So just, I don't think this is not like a land use decision where you have to come up with these detailed findings, et cetera. But, and I think staff can assist you with kind of putting some ideas out there for borders on what this could be for you, give you a couple different options, perhaps, and then you could choose amongst the options. I know that's always been helpful for the Board of Commissioners to get options, and then
okay.
you could, then you have a menu to choose from, or you can go do your own thing. But we always do like to provide some different options. I will note, we have never had to go, we've never gone through this exemption process before, so you guys are at the tip of the spear on this. So it is going to be a challenge, and but we rely on your common sense and expertise to help us through this process, because it is your recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, which is important.
Sue, did I see you unmute or raise your hand for a second? And Beth has her hand up too. Sorry.
Beth, go ahead.
Or let's let Sue talk. Ken, if
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say, I'll
Okay.
wait.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize here because I feel like it was a dumb question, but I'm just a little confused. Is what we had tonight, was this the public hearing? Or,
Yes.
okay, all right. So that answers that question. Okay, so I'm just going to think. Beth, go ahead. I got to think a little bit more now.
Okay, I'll speak while Sue thinks. So we did, as I mentioned, give a presentation to staff, and it sounds like there's some interest in hearing that. And so we would be happy to, however the process takes, to share that information. And this is a little bit touchy though, because we can only, it gets complicated. We can only provide some things and talk about some of the most important things, which are costs and rates, if it is presumed to be under the franchise and regulated. Otherwise, if we start talking about what we project rates to be and it is to be exempt, there could be antitrust issues, and we do follow all laws. We're very serious about that. And we've been told, while there may be some ability to provide services during this process, or we're not to provide service until this process is completed. So we are in a difficult situation as the regulated haulers right now, and doing what we believe is right, doing what we're told. You know, I mean, we don't landfill recyclables. If it's garbage, it goes in the garbage. It will go to the landfill. But you know, there's rumors. People have different thoughts. Somehow, don't trust their own haulers. But I just want to emphasize that our hands are tied a little bit. Lexi was right. You know, we've asked if we could start providing service, and we can't. So we don't do what Ridwell has done and come in recognizing they're violating a code, that laws are different in Oregon than they are in the state of Washington. And so we would like to have the ability to share what we propose could be a model, and share some details. So that may lend some added features to this conversation.
I would like to respond to that, Beth, a little bit, and to the Lexi's comment that we told them that the Washington Hauler Association, they could not currently provide that service. So we This process the wheels were in motion for this process to happen. So this advisory committee was preparing to have a discussion, preparing to have a conversation. We were presented with a proposal from the Washington County Hauler Association, outlined in the memo that was presented to us in the middle of April. We met with Washington County Hauler Association and heard their proposal and listened to it, and it seems like a reasonable proposal. However, we were asked afterwards if they could begin providing that service. The current administrative rules and the code says that the haulers cannot provide a service or charge a rate that has not been approved by the Board of Commissioners. So there is no service or is no rate that has been approved by the Board of Commissioners. If we wanted to create one, this is the process we would use to do that. And this is the venue we would use to have that conversation. So staff is not stifling your services because we don't want you to provide those services. We just want this committee and the board to have the opportunity to weigh in and to authorize the services so that they can be provided in accordance with the Washington County Code. So I think it's a good nuance, and we're not trying to tell you you can't do something. We just want to make sure that this process can play out and that the Board of Commissioners weighs in and this committee has an opportunity to make a recommendation on that.
Go ahead, Sandra.
I was just wondering if we did vote for this exemption, it would apply to the haulers too, and then they could do what they want immediately. I see it as a win-win situation. So I kind of was wondering why we just don't, I mean, maybe we don't vote on it tonight, but I don't see why the haulers are so up in arms about it, except they just want to get rid of any outside competition. Anything that we do that when the regulated franchise is going to take months to implement, it won't be immediate. I mean, I can tell you right now, I mean, and being on this board, I've seen it. So that's how me as a representative of my neighbors and my friends who are all for Ridwell, that's how I represent them. And
I don't think you're wrong, Sandra. So this process will take time either way, likely. You know, the recommendation the committee is deliberating and would be making either way will then have to go through the Board of Commissioners as well. And that is a process and it takes time. And there's a reason these things take time, but because we want to make sure they're the right decision and that the elected leadership gets to make them. But you're not incorrect that if the service was exempted, anybody could provide them. And if the service is included in the system, then the haulers are providing that service. Or if there's no change, the service is technically not being provided today.
I mean, they could set the rates they want. It's supply and demand. I mean, if people don't want to pay the higher rates and then pay the lower rates, I see it as a no-brainer, but maybe I'm missing some. I don't know.
Sue, I see you have your hand up again. Sorry, Ken, I don't mean to be.
No, that's fine.
moderating
I'm not seeing hands very well
Okay.
at all. So.
So now that I've thought a little bit, I guess I guess I have it's a very fine line that I am walking. I see the benefit to Ridwell. They are providing a service that right now our haulers are not able to provide. But I also am concerned that should our haulers be able to do this type of collection, that contamination is just going to explode. I have a real concern about that. We already have talked many times about the contamination in the recycling stream, and I don't think that would be improved by adding more material. It just gets confusing for people. They don't understand what should and should not go into that bin. And Ridwell seems to separate things out. So they're only collecting certain things on certain days. They just have a more personal touch with the people that they are in contact with that I don't know how our haulers would be able to do. I just don't. And maybe it's a simple process, I don't know, but it's a concern that it might be a lot to ask And so it's a hard choice for me to make. Which side of the fence to fall on, I don't know. I haven't used Ridwell. I like our haulers. I've worked with them for a long time. I think they do a great job and they provide a service to all of us. But it's kind of limited. So that's just my 2 cents, I guess. Thanks.
So, Tom, you think you and Kathy can gel this into a framework for a discussion next time?
I think we can help facilitate a discussion next time. I do see Vinod's hands up now too, and I think Ashvin unmuted, so that might imply he's interested in talking too. I'm watching these things like a hawk.
Right, I see that. Go ahead, Ashvin.
Yeah, just real quick, is there an implication for us not granting this exemption since they are currently in violation? Are they required to like cease services?
Well, so we wrote Ridwell a letter in response to the complaint after following up with them. We determined based on our analysis of the code that they were in violation. They were collecting solid waste for compensation. We asked Ridwell to cease accepting new customers to their service in unincorporated Washington County. We did not ask them to cease their service because we understood there was a large customer base already, and that there was a potential pathway in the code for them to become an authorized service, essentially not be in violation of the code. So we didn't think it was good government to shut down a service, go through a process, and potentially return it on. We want the process to play out before we take action like that. If the process plays out and the determination is made that this is not an exemption that is offered, Ridwell then would be technically in violation of county code, and the county would presumably be compelled to take action to request that they stop providing the service they're providing.
Was there a timer on that, or is that just until the process is completed?
Brad, do you want to answer the timer question?
Right. So we have run across this situation in solid waste and recycling in other issues. For those of you who've been around for a long time, Grabhorn was a classic example where they were trying to get this land use process addressed. And so we gave them an opportunity to get to where they needed to be. They didn't get where they needed to be, and they were ultimately shut down. So I see this playing out the same way, where depending on where this conversation goes, you know, if they get an exemption, then they could continue on. But if they don't get an exemption, then we would take action against them, and they would have to shut down their activities in unincorporated Washington County.
Nod, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna, you know, I think Brian actually kind of answered Sue's question by providing the service. You pull these contamination from the commingle because of the wish cycling. So and hopefully it would stop people from just throwing things in there. And the commingling is a different animal because it's a bin that you throw things in and close the lid, it goes away. So hopefully that would improve contamination levels. I was just gonna, I think Beth offered, would it be possible to see that presentation with non-numbered with the Washington County Hauler Association, so we know what that program would look like?
Yeah, I think we could absolutely invite them back to the committee to offer a presentation for more information about their proposal. That's something that if you want and Ken thinks is reasonable, I think we can do that.
Oh, I think it's totally reasonable. I'm all for it. Yes.
Brad, is that reasonable and acceptable?
Yeah, what I would suggest is I would bring it as a different item, and I could suggest that you hear that first, and then as a separate item, you reconsider this, or you continue the questions on this.
Right.
Afterwards.
Afterwards, yeah. I agree.
And does the committee feel like Ridwell has provided enough information for them to know its service, or do they want more information from Ridwell as well?
I don't.
You don't need more information, you're saying, Ken?
No, my son has Ridwell, and I've been thoroughly briefed on it.
Okay.
I'm currently a customer. I know how it works.
What was that, Ashvin?
I'm currently a customer of Ridwell also, so I feel like I know how it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
but we might have more questions for them after the presentation. I don't know if that can just, I don't know if you guys just communicate with them and if we can just feed that through you.
We can certainly invite them back to another conversation.
Is the hauler's presentation easily to reduce to writing and distributed to us by email or by that way?
The memo that was included in the staff report is a brief overview written version of that, but I would say that being able to hear the presentation and ask questions is probably going to give you more information about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sue, your hand's still up. Is it a shadow of the past or? Okay. Okay, so I would suggest if the committee is interested in continuing this conversation that we would invite the Hauler Association and potentially Ridwell back for a presentation. We would have that as a separate agenda item. It would not be an action item. It would be a presentation topic on the committee's agenda. We could do that sooner than later. If the committee is open to that, we could host the meeting, I think, with 2 weeks notice.
Thank you.
Based on the bylaws, and we can work with you all behind the scenes to try to find a date that works for everybody if that is something that you want to entertain.
Sooner is better.
What was that, Ashwin?
I said sooner is better.
Sooner is better. Yeah.
Otherwise, we
Okay.
have July 4th and then we'll push.
Yeah, July is tough. There's a lot of vacation at staff too, and historically July is one of the meetings we wouldn't hold because that's like the busiest time for everyone to take time off. So we can try to pull something together as soon as we can. We can send out some information tomorrow about trying to get something on the schedule.
Thank you.
And then staff can also work on, maybe doing a little more research into some options as suggested by Brad.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? I have been told by my Zoom consultants in a whole different area, not solid waste, but 2 hours is the limit you should plan for a Zoom session. And this is because we in AARP are trying to determine whether to have our 6-hour course, which in person was a 1-day course, be 3 2-hour sessions or 2 3-hour sessions. And the consensus from all the people who study these things is 2 hours. And so we've been 2.5 hours now. We probably ought to go home and think. And I thank all of you for coming and participating in this. And all of you whose pictures I don't see who are still here. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. So I guess we have at the end of the agenda an option for an off-topic oral communication. So I guess before we close the meeting, we should just make sure nobody in the attendee pool is interested in an off-topic conversation with the committee. And I guess we'd offer an opportunity if you raise your hand now.
And I don't have that.
Doesn't look like we're seeing anything. So I think you
Okay.
can go ahead and close it, Ken.
Well, then we're adjourned before anybody raises their hand. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
See
Thank you.
soon. Bye.
Thanks everyone for attending the June 10th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. As mentioned at the beginning, this meeting was recorded and it will be posted to the Solid Waste and Recycling website within 1 week. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.